Welcome to Talmudic Treasures. Today we're learning Suvos page 105, which discusses the prohibition of judges taking bribes or taking money at all when it comes to them being in a court system. Now, there is an exception, such as the Talmud giving a case of a person where they're not being paid for actually being a judge, but because of what's called an opportunity cost, because they could have done another job, and it has to be in a situation where it's clear that they actually had another job that they would have been compensated for, and they ended up judging instead of that. So therefore, for that reason, it is acceptable for them to take money. However, for them just in general to take money from the different people in the court case is totally forbidden. In fact, the Torah tells us that someone who takes a bribe, it's considered to be a way of blinding your own eyes, because you're not able to anymore see the other person's position. You're going to be so much accepting the words of the person that gave you money that you're going to be blinded by the absolute truth that could be really staring you in the face. In fact, interestingly enough, the actual problem of taking a bribe is, as the Talmud says, the word shochad, which means bribe, is actually two Hebrew words. And those two Hebrew words is shehu chad, that when you take a bribe, you are chad, comes from the word echad, you are becoming like one. These two different people, the person who gave the money, and in this case, the judge who accepts it, you are now merging into almost like one mind. And this is, of course, the same idea of when it comes to maybe politicians that take money, or there are special interest groups or people that are advocating for certain things, and they end up making major contributions. So the problem with that is that influences the politician, or in this case, certainly problematic, a judge, that all of a sudden they are no longer looking at you as a separate person. As the Talmud here interestingly says, we could always find negativity of others, but when we look within ourselves, we think we're great. We think we're fine. And therefore, when we think about ourselves, we're always going to think in the most positive light. And therefore, if you take a bribe, that person becomes like you. And therefore, you're always going to look in a positive way toward that person. And the Talmud here tells us, interestingly enough, it's not only taking money, but there was once a time in which there was a saintly man by the name of Shmuel, that he was traveling over a bridge, and it may have been a little bit of a wobbly bridge. So there was a guy that quickly just grabbed hold of him and said, "Here, hold my hand as you cross the bridge." Just a nice little gesture, was nothing really too significant. And then they began to talk, and then Shmuel began to realize that this guy was about to go to the court where he was going to be the judge. And at that moment, Shmuel said, "That's it. I'm invalid to be a judge." And in fact, he overheard what was going on, and he realized that even though this guy only did this small little thing for me, he realized how much more connected he was to that person, and how much more likely he may have shown favoritism and caused him to win the case had he actually accepted to be the judge. And therefore, we see from here, again, the important concept of how money has tremendous power and influence on people. We're not judges, but when someone gives money to another person, that is a way of being able to feel connected to that individual. And we have to be extremely careful when it comes to certain positions that we may find ourselves, that if we're taking money, we may not necessarily be doing what we should be doing. We may become blinded by the money that we are receiving. Instead, because of that, the Torah says that we have to be extremely careful, especially someone who is a judge, never to take any bribes.